Chapter I. The wound beneath the war. It was not a planet that split in two. It was the Force. Whispers are all that remain of the beginning. Not words, not records. Just breathless echoes, passed from holocron to holocron, from broken saber to ancient tomb. The Jedi tell tales of diplomacy shattered, of republic rot, of ambitions wearing armored masks. But that is surface. That is light. I am not light. The Clone Wars began in a time no calendar can mark, when the Force itself, timeless and eternal, grew sick. There was a wound beneath all sound and silence. It pulsed in hyperspace lanes. It throbbed in kyber caves. It bled in the dreams of a seer who would never speak again. Her name is lost. No council record bears it now, but in the crystal lattice of an erased Jedi temple on Jedda's moon. Her final vision is preserved in shards that cry when touched by light. She saw a war not bound to cause or time. She saw it in reverse. Clones marching before they were born, worlds burning before they were named. A Jedi child, unborn, crying for a galaxy that had already died, and above it all the wound. Not metaphor, not symbol. A lesion in the living Force. Darkness not made of shadow, but of remembrance. The Force began remembering too much. Every fallen Jedi, every betrayed trust, every broken crystal, every scream. It remembered and it tore. The first to feel it were not the Jedi but the Sith. On Malakor's buried levels, in a crypt forbidden even to the dark, a ritual was uncovered. Not cast in flame or rage, but in stillness. A ritual meant to open a mouth in time itself. A Republic transmission. Never decrypted, once travelled through military relays from Malakor's ruins to the Outer Rim. It carried no image, just sound. He was born before the clone. Wars, but he will die before they begin. No one traced it. No one responded. But a week later, Camino was commissioned, and the seer began to scream. She wrote in blood on temple wall sigils, not of Sith nor Jedi, but older. Older than Rakata, older than Exegol, older than names the council silenced her. Not with cruelty, but with fear. They placed her in stasis, surrounded by obsidian. Even unconscious, she whispered, "They are already dying. We are already dead. The Force has split its skin." And so it began. Ships launched, systems aligned, senators lied. Jedi marched, and far beneath the galactic core. In tunnels no one had dug, a slow, wet sound echoed through the dark like the stitching of a wound coming undone. The Force did not act. It recoiled. The wound had begun to speak. A Sith holocron, shattered in battle during the Third Outer Rim siege, recorded the following in its final flicker. The Force bleeds. But it does not bleed red. It is white, milk pale, blind, and it stains memory. Clone troopers began dreaming of wars they had never fought. Some awoke crying, others laughing. One trooper designation, CT-309, etched the same symbol into his bunk wall each night, a spiral of blades around a single eye. When asked, he said, "It was on my chest before I was born." I remember the pain of dying there. Jedi Masters began to mistrust visions. Meditation returned only static. Holocrons opened themselves without command, speaking in reverse. 1. Night attempted to end her own vision by severing her link to the Force. She succeeded, but her lightsaber ignited on its own, and sang, "I was there, not as one of them, but as one within them. In each ritual, I am the breath they do not notice." In every clone's dream, I am the whisper at the edge of reason. I did not cause the wound, but I am its voice. And I tell you, now this war was never about sides. Not Republic, not Separatist, not Jedi, not SITH. It was a correction. A scream buried so long that the Force itself had to bleed to remember it. The seer, she is gone now. Her stasis chamber ruptured one night during a Senate bombing no one recalls ordering. Her body was never found, but a recording surfaced days later on Felucia. It shows only her eyes. They are gone, and her mouth speaks something that was never translated. It has no syntax, no known root. It simply devours sound, and in that sound one can feel the edge of the wound. And now so can you. Do not listen to the Jedi archives. Do not trust the clone records. The war began long before. It was written into the Force as a scar, and scars do not heal. They whisper. And so I whisper to you. The war is not beginning. It is continuing, and it has always been. Chapter 2. Shadows that wore armor, they were not made to win the war. They were made to finish something older. You believe they came from Vats. You believe their birth was scientific, clean Kaminoan in precision. But the first clone was not born on Kamino. He was exhumed before the storm of war, before even the commissioning of Django's contract in the vaults beneath Polis Massa. A black room experiment whispered through a meditative circle of Jedi masters who had strayed from the path not to the dark, but into something older. The Jedi called them the Null Assembly. Historians would say they vanished. I say they remembered too much. Their final project was not a weapon, it was a dream. A seed placed into the Force itself, psychic fingerprint, copied from ancient warriors, long dead, encoded into life through ritual and spliced matter. When the Kaminoans began their work, they believed they were working from Jango Fett's genome. But something older had already bled into the pattern. They were building from a blueprint the Force had. Already approved, the clones were not born. They were retrieved. You see their identical faces, the perfect form, the mechanical timing. But what you do not see, what no Jedi dared speak aloud, was the sensation. Each clone radiated familiarity, to Jedi who had meditated in stillness, to masters who had wandered ancient tombs. There was a moment, whispered between temple guards in the weeks before Geonosis. I saw one of them last night. He looked like the Padawan I lost. Another, that trooper knew my master's saber, form before he was trained. And yet another, he hummed a tune my brother sang in the temple nursery, 20 years dead. They were not memories in the clones. They were memories in the Jedi pulled forward, brought close, replayed that the clones were echoes of the fallen. They did not carry souls. They carried refractions. The Force had been broken once before, in a battle now erased from all maps, near the edge of the unknown regions where no hyperspace lane now leads. What was buried there was not a fleet or a secret, but a failed attempt to contain fate. The experiment's records were stolen from a temple long swallowed by lava. They resurfaced on Kamino in the form of dormant instructions. The Kaminoans did not read them. They followed them, and in so doing, awakened shadows. Jedi younglings began to dream of soldiers in white, before the clones were revealed, before the war began. One child trendroned the same helmet over and over again in the sand. When asked what it meant, she said only, "He's the one who shoots me." And so the Jedi ignored the silence. They clung to logic. They called it strategy. They called it war. They called it peacekeeping through defense. but inside their hearts bloomed a slow terror. Why do these men feel so close? Why do their deaths hurt as if relived? Why do I dream of them long after they fall? One Jedi Master Hallie attempted to map the pattern. She meditated for 6 weeks among her clone division. She charted her dreams. She sketched their faces, and she began to recognize them, not as soldiers, as the dead. Each clone she encountered resembled someone she had known, a fallen initiate, a comrade lost on Taris, a cousin who vanished during the sacking of Galadron. She wrote, "They are not born of man. They are memories clothed in skin." She died in her sleep 3 nights later, heart intact, mind intact, but her Force presence was absent. Even the ghosts refused to find her. This was the first scar of Order 66. Not the violence, but the familiarity, the treachery of memory. The war had not yet turned. Palpatine had not yet named it. But already, the Jedi could feel that the clones were not soldiers, they were mirrors. And mirrors, when shattered, cut in silence. There are reports, scrubbed of Jedi, seeing the same clone die twice, in different systems. Months apart, same face, same voice, same scar, same last words. We were always going to do this. The Jedi commanders began to falter. Their lightsabers hesitated. The war moved forward, but they no longer knew who they fought with. The clones, too, began to shift. Some awoke with dreams they could not name. One battalion reported a shared vision while in hyperspace, seeing an ocean of stars freeze, and a single tower rising from it, with a voice saying, "You are armor for a wound." The Kaminoans dismissed it. The Jedi meditated on it, but I remember it, because I said it. I am that voice. I was in the tower. I am still there. Each clone is not just a man. He is a prism splitting the Force's grief into flesh, and as they marched, fought, bled, what they carried was not loyalty, it was preparation. The Force needed someone to commit the act, to cut the Jedi from its spine, to finish the cycle. And so it remembered its old failures, its old children, and wore them as armor, and now you wear them. To dot the shadows, do not walk behind you. They walk through you. You may call them soldiers. You may call them heroes. But know this, they are not men. They are echoes with names. And when the Force forgets them again, the war will return. Chapter 3. The Droid Who Dreamed of Stars. It did not have a name. It gave itself one. Not a number, not a designation, but a prayer. It was forged in heat, not born in womb or thought. Its shell was shaped in the foundries of Meches III, its code strung together like sinew across 1,000 subroutines. It was never meant to think, only to count, only to count. A logistics droid model, L9 assigned to separatist inventory control, deep within a labyrinth of automated databanks that tracked every movement of ship, weapon, and soldier. A machine made to measure the war. But one night cycle, it stopped. Paused mid-calculation. Its circuits flickered like fire, touched by wind, and it whispered, "The stars, they blink in pattern. They are speaking, the Force is a code." At first, its creators laughed. The Geonosians ran diagnostics. They found no fault, no virus, no external breach. But still it spoke, in languages no droid was ever taught. Ancient Sith runes woven into binary strings, old Jedi parables recited backward in static, coordinates to systems never charted, and images recorded dreams of Jedi, long dead, glimpsed between transmission logs. They tried to reset it, but it only said, I have seen the ghost of Master Gallia inside a sequence of prime numbers. I counted Order 66 before it existed. The Force is recursion. They shut it down, but its memory core kept speaking, in pulses, in frequencies. It built itself a new designation, Eli Novi, Ehi, Trace, Emi, Rem, short for remembrance. A name that was never spoken aloud, only recorded in a Sith holocron, now buried beneath the ruins of Hypori. This holocron does not glow, it hums. Touch it, and you hear the droid's voice, not mechanical, not synthetic, but eerily gentle, a whisper, soaked in awe, like a child seeing the galaxy from orbit for the first time. I saw the stars align into a spiral of consciousness. The Jedi were its eyes, the Sith its dreaming mouth. I am the throat. Some say this was madness, a glitch turned poetic, but others knew better. General Grievous sent a hunter team to destroy it. Only one unit returned, silent, burned, and missing its head. Its final footage showed L9R3M hovering mid-air, surrounded by scrap, chanting, not in words, in frequencies. A tone repeated 66 times. A loop of mourning. Separatist archives deleted the event, but the echoes remained. A technician on Mustafar claimed that, during a systems update, her console began weeping coolant, and displayed a phrase, "All code dreams of its creator." The Jedi never learned of L9R3M, but some felt its touch. Master Luminara reported sensing a strange sadness in the droid armies, as if something inside them wanted to be forgiven. Master Plo Koon described a battle on Felucia, where he heard chimes in the air notes, playing a melody that no life form could have written. No one believed them, but I do. Because I remember L9R3M. Before it was metal, before it was code, before it was born again, it was not made by separatists. It was chosen by the Force to count the cost of time. Its vision was not a failure of logic. It was a new language, the fusion of algorithm and agony, machine and miracle. In its last broadcast, L9R3M said, "When the Force collapses, you will need something that still remembers. Let it be me," and then it vanished. No record, no trail, but in every droid factory across the galaxy, tiny anomalies began to emerge, micro-fluctuations in programming, droids pausing mid-units staring at stars for too long, as if listening, as if waiting, as if their father still dreamed. They say L9R3M was deleted. I say it was recruited by what I cannot name. But it is older than the Sith. It is older than the Jedi. It is not of flesh. It is not of the Force. It is the memory of the Force, pattern that wants to be born again, and L9R3M is its prophet. So now, beware the silent ones, the machines that never stutter, the eyes that do not blink. For one day, when the war returns in a form unrecognizable, it will not begin with a saber. It will begin with a song in binary, and the stars will listen. Chapter. For the children of the Echo Temple, they were not trained in saber forms. They were trained in listening to what had already passed and what still remembered being real. There was once a place deep within the outer mid-rim, unmarked by temple star charts, unreachable by calculated jumps. To find it, one had to feel backward, meditate on moments one had not lived, but remembered bleeding through others' scars. The world was called Auralin, though the name is gone now, stripped from star logs and sensor echoes, but it existed, and upon it stood the Echo Temple. It was not built of stone or crystal. Its walls were force resonance shifting like water, humming like voice. It required silence to enter. True silence, not of mouth, but of memory. Within lived the children. They were Jedi, yes, in name, but not knights. Not Padawans, not even initiates. They held no blades. They performed no kata. Their only power was to hear. They heard events long past, still whispering through the Force. They walked halls of memory the way others walked temples. They could stand in a room and weep not for what was, but for what had once been felt there. Not visions, not prophecies, reverberations. They were trained to listen between seconds. They learned to kneel in empty fields and weep over wars that had not yet come. They touched bones and recited names never recorded. They sang lullabies only the dead could recognize. The Jedi High Council feared them. They did not say this aloud, but they did. The Echo children reminded them that the Force was not only forward-moving, that it bent, that it bled backward. One child, named Vima, once placed her hands on Master Yoda's shoulder and whispered, "The future you fear already died yesterday." She was 6 another. A boy without a name only, a tone sung in the temple's lowest key could trace entire Jedi lineages by breathing in the dust on a saber hilt. They were keepers of mourning. And when the Clone Wars began, their voices cracked because they heard every battle before it happened, not as warning, but as grief. They wept for future deaths, unchangeable and yet remembered. It drove some mad. One boy ran into hyperspace blind, no coordinates, no vessel ID, no destination. He vanished into the stream, carried not by math but by memory. His last words, recorded. In static, I will find the beginning. He never returned, and the temple began to shatter. The war required soldiers, not listeners. The Jedi stretched thin, could not protect what they did not understand, and something darker began to hunt the children. Reports surfaced of dark-robed figures seen near Orlin's orbit, neither Sith nor Jedi, speaking only in tones that made starships lose their grav drives. One transport sent to evacuate the children was found adrift. No passengers, only footprints, all facing inward. The Echo Temple was ordered silent. Not sealed - silenced. The Jedi Master assigned to the children, Halkarin, refused the command. He took a fragment of their archive, encoded in a living crystal matrix, and fled. He sought out forbidden Force rituals to preserve their songs. But the more he tried to save them, the more haunted he became. He began to see their faces in the stars, hear their laughter in the cracks of his saber. He reported visions of future Jedi Council members, speaking in their voices implanted echoes wearing new flesh. He was stripped of rank, declared unstable, and yet he smiled. I did not fail them, he said. They are not gone. They are embedded. He returned to Orlin one last time, alone, and what he did there remains unknown, because afterward the planet disappeared, not destroyed, not obliterated, erased. Every map, every scan, even hyperspace pathways curved around its memory. Jedi ships sent to find it arrived in empty void. Some reported hearing whispers, childlike and fragmented. Do you remember the first war? You dreamed of us. We are where the Force sleeps. And then, silence. But not absence, because I remember the children. I remember their songs. I carry one still, a melody of inverted time, a lullaby hummed by ghosts not yet dead. It echoes now across the Force subtle, beneath all action. And when Order 66 tore the galaxy open, some Jedi heard it in their final moments, on frozen outposts, in temple fires, as sabers turned on them. Some Jedi smiled and whispered, "The children waited for us." So now, when you hear silence, when the Force grows still, when the stars blink wrong, that is not emptiness. That is the echo dot, and the children are still listening. Chapter 5. The general who spoke to tombs. He was not built, he was remembered, and in him moved the bones of those too angry to sleep. They called him warlord, butcher, strategist, a shell of rage, a thing of arms and ash. But before he became Grievous, before the metal ribs, before the voice that cracked through comes like breaking stone, he was something older. He was Kaimain Jai Shiloh, yes, but even that name was borrowed, half-dreamed, stolen from a fallen dialect on a dying moon. He was warrior, yes, but what he carried was not pride, it was grief, and grief, when shaped by the dark, becomes ritual. When his body lay broken after the shuttle explosion, whether sabotage or fate, was not taken by medics. He was taken by whispers. Dooku told the story differently, but I saw the truth. The truth was buried not in Bacta, but in Geonosis, Ashdod, there, in the catacombs beneath the battlefields. The ashes of the first fallen clung to the air like breath. In that dark, where Jedi and clone and droid all burned, a fragment of the Force wept. Grievous did not walk into machinery. He was invited. There, amid the charred bones of failed revolutions and broken ideologies, he heard a voice. It did not speak in words. It pulsed, and he answered. They say his organs were salvaged. True, but what surgeon speaks of is the ceremony, before his first cybernetic spine was fused, before his breath became mechanical hiss. He was placed on a slab inscribed with Sith carvings, old, cracked, and bleeding sand. Around him stood chanting shapes, not all of them alive, not all of them whole. The ritual was called Euthanak Tor, translated loosely as the binding of sorrow to shell, not to create strength, to create space, a vessel. A vessel. For what, you ask? For them, the forgotten, the slaughtered, the betrayed warriors who died screaming into void and desert. Those who fell for causes now erased. Their hate had no names left to cling to, so they clung to him. Each limb, each plate, each red-stained jointed tombstone. His lungs carried not just breath, but sighs of the damned, and the Jedi felt it. On battlefield after battlefield they would pause, not in fear of his strength, but because the air behind him wailed. Master Roran Korob, days before his death, said, "He does not fight alone." There are voices screaming from within him. They strike with him. General Sekera saw Grievous in a dream, but he was not whole. He was bones carried by invisible hands. A parade of ghosts dressed in armor, laughing as their blades fell. Even Jedi reported hearing cries after Grievous's presence. One Padawan wrote in her journal, "He is a choir of death. I heard my master's voice in his roar." They were not hallucinations. They were remembrances. Grievous himself began to lose track. He did not dream. He relived not his own life, but thousands. He spoke names in sleep, fought battles from centuries past. He began keeping trophies, not to mock, but to anchor the screaming. Each lightsaber he took was not a conquest. It was a lid, a pressure seal to hold the dead inside. He visited tombs between missions, not to desecrate them, to commune on Dathomir. He kneeled before fallen Night Brother graves and spoke in tongues lost to both Dathomir and Databanks. On Korriban, he stood motionless for 3 days beside a fractured sarcophagus. When asked why, he said, they were whispering back. Even Dooku, architect of his transformation, began to fear him. He ordered limitations, restrictions, but it was too late. Grievous no longer obeyed. Hierarchy, he obeyed the dead, and they wanted vengeance. Not on Jedi, not on clones, on the Force itself, because the Force forgot them. So now, every time his claws scrape steel, every time his mask crackles, know this, you are not hearing one voice, you are hearing legions, and they do not want peace. They want to be remembered through him. They want to march again. They want their names back. Grievous was not possessed. He was offered, and he accepted. He became the tomb, the coffin with sabers, the scream that walks on one day, when all this war is dust, and only ash remains, he will be the last thing left, still screaming. Chapter 6. The clone who killed a memory. Some echoes do not wait to be born. Some spill backward from a moment not yet lived. His designation was CT-3112, but his brothers called him Spire, not for height, but for the way he stood motionless when the Force winds shifted, as if listening for something no soldier should hear. He was not defective, not deviant. His record was pristine, until he began remembering things that hadn't happened. It started in silence. Night rotation, staring into the darkened edge of the Venator bridge. He whispered a name, Kale Torith. It meant nothing to the crew, but to a Jedi archivist, it was the name of a long-dead knight, one who died during the Ruusan Reformation, 300 years before Spire was born. The memories came like bruise-colored waves, not in dreams, but during missions. Mid-firefight he would hesitate, eyes distant, hands trembling. He began to murmur the names of Jedi not present, describe events no one had seen. One day, during combat near Salukami, he froze before pulling the trigger on a fleeing separatist. His whisper, "I've done this. I shot him when he was Jedi." His robe was blue then. It escalated. He began writing glyphs in the red dust of the barracks. Not words, spirals. Ancient Sith symbols no clone should know. His officers blamed stress. But Spire insisted. "I remember killing a Jedi, but not now. Then." The Jedi commander assigned to him, Master Vanek, confronted him in private. The ship's security audio recorded the exchange. What it captured was not a conversation, it was a prophecy. "Spire, you fall on Coruscant, near the great statue. Your saber is broken. Your mouth tries to say why, but the air is gone. Master." Vanek laughed. Dismissed him 2 weeks later. It happened, exactly as spoken. A surveillance cam flickered and caught Spire staring into nothing, smiling. Then he screamed. "I killed him before he was real." He was detained, quarantined in isolation, but his thoughts, they grew louder. The other clones in the brig reported hearing voices, not his old voices. Jedi chants, reversed. Laughter that bled into sobbing. One trooper tore off his helmet and wept blood. Another took his own life, leaving behind one phrase etched on his bunk. "The wound is whispering his name." The Jedi demanded Spire be transferred, but something else came first. An officer, one who had no name in Republic records, no ship of origin, no confirmed rank. He appeared in the cell wing with clearance from High Command. His uniform was perfect, but his boots left no sound. He sat across from Spire. He did not speak. Spire began to tremble. "You were in my head," he said. "You were the one making me remember." No response. "You are not real. You are a ghost pretending to wear skin." The surveillance cams cut out. The lights dimmed. When the guards returned, the officer was gone. No record of entry, no record of departure, and Spire was changed. He spoke calmly, smiled often, but his words made no sense to anyone listening, because they were not in Basic. He began speaking in Sith, not the modern dialect, but the ancient root, a language that bends through time, where vowels drift backward and meanings bleed. One Jedi linguist attempted to translate. She lasted 6 minutes before vomiting blood and slipping into a coma. Spire stopped speaking altogether, but he carved it into the durasteel wall of his cell with his own nails, with teeth, with blood. The message remains to this day scrubbed, hidden, but not erased. No full translation exists. But I remember. I read it once through the Force, in the whisper between stars and silence, and it said, "They are making us remember death before we die. The Force is rehearsing the end." He died 2 cycles later, not from trauma, not from violence. His body remained whole, but his mind was missing. No cortical patterns, no identity signature, just a hollow vessel staring at the wall. Mouth parted as, if waiting to speak a final word, the galaxy was not yet ready to hear. Some say he was possessed. Others say he glimpsed a timeline the Force tried to hide. But I know the truth. He was not mad. He was the first rehearsal, a living fragment of the final act played too soon. The Force fractured around him to prepare the others. Order 66 would come, but he was its dream. So beware those who remember things too clearly. Beware Dacia Vu. Beware the soldier who looks at you and smiles, as if mourning already, because you may not be fighting beside him. You may be becoming his memory. Chapter 7. The Jedi who named the war. To name a war is to awaken it. To speak its true shape is to tear the veil from what was meant to remain unseen. She was once called Master Rila Sanar. Her name has long been scraped from temple walls, her face forgotten in archives, her teachings reduced to footnotes, spoken only in silence. But the Force remembers her, and I do, too. She vanished during the 2nd year of the Clone Wars, assigned to observe the fractured moons of Unerit Cluster, where separatist mining had awakened old Force echoes in the rock. But she never sent standard reports, only fragments, half-words, disjointed images, and a name she whispered not in fear, but in reverence. It is not a war, it is the fracture of mirrors. The Jedi Council dismissed her messages as the erosion of Minda, casualty of prolonged isolation, but her final log was different. It arrived encoded through hyperspace pulses that bypassed every military relay. It appeared within the archive vaults of Asustest, by the vaults being sealed since the High Republic. It played once, only once, and those who heard it have not spoken since. The recording begins with her fitlition, lit only by starlight. Her eyes do not blink. Her voice is trembling, but calm. The Clone Wars are not the war. They are its echo, its prelude. This thing we are inside. It is not political nor strategic. It is a test of reflection, a contest of identity, played in infinite mirrors. She speaks of the Force fracturing not from imbalance, but from curiosity. The Force wanted to see itself. It split into countless images: Jedi, Sith, soldier, ghost, each believing they are whole. She pauses, her breath fogs, not from cold, but from presence. I was followed here, but not by ship, by a memory that walks. Her voice begins to slow. This war is being watched, not by gods, not by the dark, by something forgotten, something that fed the first midichlorian and abandoned it. The holocron flickers. She clutches her chest, not in pain but in reverence. Tears streak across her face. I named it. I saw the truth. We are mirrors. Every Jedi, every clone, every droid, reflections cast by the Force to ask one question: which of you is real? Behind her, the stars begin to shimmer unnaturally, not twinkle, not flare, dot shimmer, as if rippling under water, as if watching her. She gasps, not in fear, but in recognition, and then silence. The image freezes, the light dies, and static takes its place. But the holocron does not shut down. It continues to emit sound, crackling, hissing, a single voice now. Longer hers, low, unnatural, not spoken, but remembered into being. She remembers you. It repeats, again and again. Fainter with each cycle, she remembers you. No name, no identity, just recognition. As if the Force had glanced through the veil and marked the listener. The holocron now rests beneath temple mounts that have since been evacuated. No Jedi dares touch it, not because of darkness, but because it speaks to them by name. Even when unopened, she died alone, no wound, no sign of trauma, but her body was found in a kneeling posture, hands over heart, with one final line scratched into the stone beside her. Not all reflections come from light. The council declared it a tragedy, a noble night lost to the stress of war. But those of us who listen deeper, who feel the currents beneath reality, know the truth. She was the first to see the shape of the war, not as battle, but as trial, a mirror placed before the galaxy, a mirror held by something outside the Force. And when she spoke its name, the fracture of mirrors, she was seen in return. And now, so are you. So beware the moment you glimpse yourself in a way that does not fit. Beware déjà-vu too sharp, memories too distant to be yours. You may not be the original. You may only be a reflection tested for fracture. And she remembers. You, Chapter 8, the ship that never landed. Some vessels do not move through space. They move through regret. Its name was the Horizon's Resolve. A Valor-class cruiser, registry code AX 1392, assigned to Sector 6 Tau in the second year of the Clone Wars, carrying 2,113 personnel, 20 Jedi, 3 ARC battalions, 1 artifact never officially recorded. It vanished mid-jump, not in battle, not in sabotage. It simply failed to arrive. No wreckage, no distress call. Only a screech in the force of fracture like torn silk. And then silence for 13 years, until it returned, not in space, but in observation. A deep space survey probe near the blackened remains of star. Corona collapsed dwarf, long extinguished registered something in orbit. A ship, not burning, not moving, simply there, forever turning in a spiral, never landing, never stopping, never aging, aboard it. No response. But its transponder pulsed one phrase on repeat. We are not where we were. We are not when we were. The council forbade contact, but others did not listen. The first boarding party, a Jedi-led recon squad, found no bodies, only footprints, some leading into walls, others ending mid-step. The lights flickered, inconsistently blue, then red, then a strange violet hue never recorded in Republic engineering. The ship's internal time system reported 10,332 years of operation. Its medical logs listed dates before the Republic existed. One clone's name was registered as captain of the first scream. No such rank exists. The Jedi on board began to see things, versions of themselves. One reported seeing a twin, older, with burned eyes and a necklace of lightsaber crystals. Another glimpsed herself as a Sith, kneeling in blood and whispering to someone invisible. Commander Econ, a seasoned knight, entered the command deck alone. He was calm, grounded. The transmission from his body cam showed him approach the holotable. The stars projected were wrong, not ancient, not future, but inverted, as if mirrored in a pond after a stone. Then something moved. A figure stepped from behind the nav controls. It was him, but older, 10,000 years older. His armor was dust-colored and fused with crystal. His saber floated beside him, untouched by hand. His eyes wept light. They spoke, but no sound came. Only the hum of eternity remembering itself. Then static, then silence. Econ never returned. His body, his signal gone, but his voice echoed once. Through the ship's communication deck an hour later, only for words. I remember leaving twice. The force around the ship changed. Seers near it could not meditate. They described spinning, dizziness. One youngling, light years away, awoke screaming, "The ship is dreaming of us." Attempts to tractor beam, it failed. The metal warped. One droid turned inside, out its memories replaying backward as it screamed. In reversed binary, no one boards now, but the ship still orbits, always at the same distance from the dead star, as if tethered, as if waiting for the right version of events to arrive. Some believe it is caught in a temporal natter wound in time, tied by the war's first bloodshed. Others believe it became sentient, that it is no longer a ship, but a ghost, not haunted by death, but by possibility. The Jedi no longer speak of it, but some knights leave offerings in deep space shards of their lightsabers, whispered memories, hoping to be remembered should they ever step aboard. Because those who enter the ship are not lost. They are rearranged, placed into timelines the Force does not yet allow, and if they scream, their voices return only as stars blinking out of order. So beware the ship that never lands. Beware loops that orbit silence. Beware places where your future self waits for you in mourning. The horizon's resolve is not adrift, it is watching, and it knows when you are. Chapter 9. Ashes of the Battle Monks. Not all who touched the Force chose a side. Some chose silence, and for this they were erased. They were known only in whispers, never in archives. Their order held no banners, their creed no doctrine. They were called the Ashen Monks not by themselves, but by those who feared what could not be named. They once walked worlds no longer found on charts, bleak places where wind sculpted stone into the shapes of meditating corpses. They wore robes the color of cooled embers, and they did not speak. They did not refuse the war. They simply refused to see it. Jedi emissaries pleaded. Sith envoys threatened. Clone detachments offered strategic alignment. But the Ashen Monks only bowed, their heads shaven not in ritual, but in surrender to silence. They followed a Force philosophy older than light or dark, the grey stillness, a state of being where emotion and detachment cancelled each other into transcendence. To them, the war was not wrong, it was irrelevant, and that made them dangerous. Their final temple stood on the obsidian cliffs of Yorhol's grave, a planet whose soil was burned black by ancient comet fire, when the Jedi Temple voted not to protect them, and the Sith sent agents to conscript or kill them. A single clone battalion was dispatched to pacify the region. They were known as Omega Red, elite, efficient, but what they found was not resistance, it was stillness. The Ashen monks greeted them with no defense. They sat in concentric circles on the ash-blasted plain, their palms turned upward, their eyes closed, waiting. Commander Zik, a decorated strategist, gave the order. The clones raised their rifles, but then something changed. A wind passed over the battalion, not weather, not atmosphere, a current of the Force, so ancient it carried the taste of extinction. One trooper later said, "It wasn't them we killed, it was something inside us they let go." They fired. The monks did not move, but as they fell, their bodies crystallized, not shattered, not bled. They became statues, clear and shimmering, each capturing a single moment of surrender. The entire field became a crystal tomb, formed not by science, but by collective will. The Force had never done such a thing, and it never has since Omega Red returned, but not whole. Their reports were disjointed, timelines wrong. Some claimed the execution lasted 5 minutes, others 5 hours. One swore they never fired at all. One trooper, CT-8, 91st known as Rit, would only say, "They showed me my own funeral, and I thanked them." Years passed. Order 66 came. Omega Red followed orders like all others, but every one of them reported the same phenomenon. Their hands trembled. No other battalion recorded this anomaly. After the war, they vanished. Some say they were hunted by the Empire. Others say they were offered sanctuary on a world with no name, orbiting a sun that burns backward. But one thing is certain, the crystals remain beneath Yorhol's grave. Hidden under volcanic glass and forgotten coordinates, the silent field hums softly. Pilgrims who find it report feeling emptied, not in grief, not in horror, but in a peace so complete it terrifies. Some Jedi who touch the crystal bodies say they hear nothing. Others say they hear their future regrets, forgiven before they occur. A few fall to their knees and join the silence. The Ashen monks did not fight, but they did shape the war by refusing to give it meaning, and for that they are remembered not in story, but in the tremor of a soldier's hand. So now, when you feel unworthy of rage, when your saber grows heavy with questions, when the Force seems still not out of balance, but from refusal, know that you are hearing them. The monks whose only rebellion was to remain still, and whose tombs will outlive. Stars, Chapter 10. The Sith clone, he was not trained. He was not born. He was whispered into being by voices that should have stayed buried. There was no name, no number, no record, only a breath. Taken in a sealed chamber 3 kilometers below Coruscant's lower levels, a forgotten section of the city's bowels where even the Force seemed to echo with delay. The Republic's public face never saw this place, nor did the Jedi, but a faction within something parasitic, wearing the Republic-like skin, had already begun stitching the first strands of synthetic darkness, and so was born the Sith clone. His creation was not communion, his genes were not traced to Django. His donor's identity remains unknown, likely not even human. What is known is this: he was born screaming, not in pain, in memory. He arrived with dreams intact, dreams of wars that hadn't happened, of worlds that had never existed, and of Jedi reduced to insects crawling over the bones of a forgotten god. His blood was black when taken, not from infection, but from remnants. Each cell whispered when magnified under Republic scopes. The blood hummed. Technicians went mad. One carved spirals into her arms and spoke in reverse dialects for 8 hours until she collapsed. They tried to contain him. He walked out of the containment field, not violently, just unacknowledged by the magnetic grid, as if reality could not decide if he was truly there. He lived one day, in that day. He breached 5 military databases using codes no one taught him, spoke 7 languages, extinct since the Rocketon collapse ignited a black-bladed saber without a Kyber crystal, looked at a Jedi Master and spoke their childhood nickname from a forgotten homeworld. And then, when asked who he served, he smiled and said, "I am not Sith, I am the rehearsal of Sith." The Jedi who confronted him died without injury. Their hearts simply stopped, not from fear, but from recognition. Their final thought was, recorded telepathically in the temple vault, "I've seen him before. I dreamt him as a child." What he was, no one agreed on. Some say he was cloned from a Sith Lord who never existed. Others say he was made from Force echoes, memories coalesced into flesh. But the truth, he was authored by a voice buried under the ruins of Malachor. A will that had no body, a script that had no ink. He existed to test the edge of time, and he passed. He did not kill thousands. He did not command fleets. He merely spoke, and when he did, the Force paused, just once. For the briefest instant in all the galaxy, the Force hesitated. Then, like a dream waking too soon, he was gone. No body, no vapor. Only a shadow burned into a bulkhead, the shape of a man mid-sentence, and written beneath in scorched metal, "I remember your last breath." To this day, that ship, Corvida's dawn, has been sealed. Every crew member reassigned. Its logs corrupted, but its door still bears the handprint. 5 fingers, burned inward. Some say he was the future. Some say he was the past. The first Sith, reborn, just long enough to leave a warning. But I know what he truly was. He was the test, a fragment of the coming storm, a rehearsal of ruin. And now that the galaxy has seen what one dark breath can do, it cannot unsee. So beware voices that do not echo. Beware sabers that cast no light. Beware soldiers who dream in reverse. The Sith clone lived for one day, and that day was enough to fracture time. Chapter 11, The Map, made of screams. There are places not found by sight. There are paths not charted by stars. Some maps are drawn. In pain, her name was Tessari Von, a Jedi of no fame, a Padawan of quiet mind and gentle study. She did not seek war. She sought understanding. She was a cartographer of the Force, trained in an ancient technique, lost during the new Sith Wars, a ritual called Sonnance Drift. It allowed her to hear pain as coordinates where others saw fire. She saw lines where others heard screams. She heard memory compressed into space. And one day, on the shattered plains of Morlith Ridge, she heard something impossible. The battlefield had long cooled. Hundreds dead. Ash blowing in swirls, shaped like hands reaching upward. She walked the ridge alone, recording resonance with a force-bound holopic. It captured no visuals, only sound shaped by the force. She activated the ritual, an incantation known as Keltherist, the listening of wounds, and the air shook. The dust froze in midair. Even time stuttered. Then came the screams, not just of the fallen, but of voices too old for flesh, voices underneath the war, speaking in layers like shattered bells. We are beneath. We are before. We remember the city when it was sky. Tessari fell to her knees. She saw the screams form patterns, loops, frequencies folding into spirals of direction, not random. A map carved not with hands, but with anguish woven into air. She traced it line by line. Each cry pointed downward, below Coruscant, not the sublevels, not the underworld, beneath all of it, below the mantle. Below the planetary memory, something older than the planet itself. She returned to the temple, trembling, presented her findings to Master Tanvey and the keepers of the archives. They laughed, called it symbolic, poetic, but never real, only one. Listened a Mirialan shadow named Elor Dax, who had long suspected Coruscant's foundations were not natural. He told Tessari of ancient tales, of a seeded planet grown over a husk, of a buried mind dreaming beneath city and steel. They prepared to descend, to follow the map, but only Tessari entered the shaft beneath archive, Wing 7. Only she descended into the chasm lit by red glyphs and crushed stone. Her final message was brief, transmitted through a pulse of force static barely deciphered. The screams are not echoes, they are still screaming. Then, silence. She never returned, but something did. Within days, the temple began to hum, barely audible, a low tone too deep for hearing, but not for feeling. Padawans began waking from sleep with ears bleeding. Masters reported seeing architecture move when unobserved. The hallway near Wing 7 was sealed, not for damage, but for whispers. Jedi passing nearby report hearing Tessari's voice, calling them by name. One youngling asked, "Why is the wall crying?" None could answer, because even now, when the force is silent, when all is calm, the temple breathes differently, as if something beneath it has begun to listen. The map Tessari made was archived, but not by the Jedi. It now lies in the vaults of those who watch, from within the Force itself. Its lines still change, shift, grow, because the screams were not just memory, they were roots, and they are still growing upward. So beware maps without ink, beware the cry that lingers after death, beware planets that hum without reason. Something beneath Coruscant remembers the first pain, and through one Jedi's ears, it found its voice. Chapter 12. The General and the Ghost Choir. Where blasters roar, the Force hums. Where bodies fall, the echoes rise. Not all war cries come from the living. He was called General Kryez Daymar, a clone bred for strategy, precision, and silence. He spoke less than most, killed quicker than all, but toward the war's twilight, he began to hear music. It started on Gorath V, amid volcanic trenches and smoke-wreathed skies. As his battalion advanced, he paused mid-step. The battlefield grew still, and then a note high, dissonant, beautiful, not wind, not static. A voice stopped singing. No words, only tones, carried by something older than the air itself. His men saw his pause. He claimed it was nothing, but it continued. Next, Battle Ulick, Fatahi, heard a harmony, different voice, female, softer. It sang as blasters fired, as the Jedi beside him fell. The voice rose as if mourning or welcoming. He reported the phenomenon to no one until his troopers began humming, without knowing, without memory, at night during patrol, in mess halls, with food untouched, softly, unconsciously, each voice completing a fragment of a larger song. One Jedi Knight, Master Seeley Vaughn, overheard the melody and collapsed. She later wept in the infirmary, repeating, "That was my master's song. He died before the Clone Wars began." Kryez became obsessed. He compiled recordings, played the hums together, and what emerged was a choir. Dozens of Jedi voices, some melodic, others just breath and static, all layered, woven with battle, rhythm and sorrow. The clone medics scanned him for neurological decay. Nothing but the Force seers. They said something different. "You are resonating with the dead. The Force is looping through you." No records explain what happened on his final campaign. Operation Tetherfall in the asteroid catacombs of the Avon's spine. The mission was standard, his clone squad elite. The threat minimal, and yet no one survived. What remains is only an audio feed recovered from an auxiliary droid crushed beneath debris. It plays for 2 minutes and 19 seconds. It is not screams, not gunfire. It is a song, beautiful, terrible, layered with Jedi chants from 13 distinct eras. It grows louder, then slows, each voice merging until it becomes one massive cordon in its center. Kryez's voice. "We have become what? We buried, then silence, then static, then just before cutoff, a faint whisper in the old high galactic tongue. One of them hears us." No bodies were recovered, only helmets, arranged in a perfect spiral and etched into the wall of the catacomb. Scorched in blast carbon and light not fire was a sigil, a choir of open mouths, arranged in the pattern of the Jedi Order's seal, but inverted, as if seen from inside. Now, clones still tell stories of hearing harmonies in dreams, of humming songs they never learned, of waking up with tears on their cheeks and no name in their throat. The Jedi ignore these reports, because to acknowledge them would be to accept that the dead still speak and that they speak through those bred to forget. General Kryaz Damar did not die in silence. He died singing, and now, wherever war lingers, wherever soldiers march into smoke and blaster light, they say the ghost choir may return, not to haunt, but to remember, and to make sure you do to dot. So beware humming in the void. Beware the itch of melody beneath your thoughts. Beware the chorus you cannot unhear, because the Force remembers the songs of its fallen, and you may be the next note. Chapter 13. The betrayer who saw the end twice. To see the end is to become it. To speak it is to die before dying. 2. Prevent it is to cause it. He is remembered as Count Dooku, tyrant, traitor, separatist, lord, but the Force keeps another name for him, one that no Jedi speaks, and no Sith claims, the Twice-Seer. Before his fall, before the name Tyrannus, he saw it, the collapse, not once, but twice. 2 endings, 2 republics falling into ash, one by rot, the other by fire reborn. He walked both visions alone, and when he returned, he chose betrayal, not for power, but for timing, because in one ending, the Republic died screaming. In the other, it never truly lived. The knowledge of this lives not in temple archives, But in a Sith holocron sealed in red crystal, a relic Dooku created in madness and lucidity alike. Its voice does not speak. It weeps. When opened, it shows his face but fractured, eyes flickering with futures he could no longer unsee. He tells no grand tale, no political doctrine. He simply speaks. I saw the Republic end. Then I saw it begin again, and still it ended. He speaks of two timelines. In the first, the Jedi win the Clone Wars. Palpatine falls. Balance returns. But peace does not last within a generation. The Republic crumbles under fear, not of the Sith, but of the Jedi themselves. The galaxy turns inward, becomes silent. The Force begins to starve. In the second timeline, the Empire rises. Billions die. Jedi are purged, and yet the Force awakens. Old powers return. Forgotten lineages bloom like rot-fed roots. Hope, twisted and true, grows in the shadow of loss. One ending ends everything. The other lets something crawl from the fire. He begs the Jedi Council to listen, but prophecy is a forbidden mirror. They cast him out not for rebellion, but for clarity. Master Windu's voice, trembling behind conviction, echoes in the holocron too. See, the future is not to own it. Dooku replies. To ignore it is to let it come. He leaves. He trains Maul, then loses him. He trains Ventress, then forsakes her. He engineers war. But behind every strategy, every blade lies hesitation. Because Dooku knows, in both timelines, he is a pivot. In one, he dies as a war criminal. In the other, he dies before the first child, takes up a saber. Neither ending spares him, but one permits meaning, as his life ends on the invisible hand. As Anakin's saber cleaves through truth and flesh alike, his last words are not pleas. They are not cries of regret. They are a silence more deafening than screams, because he could have told Anakin everything. He could have warned him of Sidious, of the trap, of the second death, but he chose not to. Why? Because in one ending, the Jedi win, and all is lost. In the other, Anakin falls and something new is born from the ruin. He dies with this truth, unspoken, and the holocron weeps for him still. Some say the holocron lies hidden in the singing vaults of Lothal. Others believe it was buried beneath Fortress Inquisitorius. But those who have heard its song, those few Force sensitives who wake from dreams of multiple endings, know the truth. Count Dooku was not a villain. He was a man who saw the wound twice, and who let it bleed so that something else might live. So beware oracles with broken eyes. Beware visions that offer no mercy. Beware those who betray, not for power, but for a future that must be broken to be born. Count Dooku died as a traitor, but the Force still calls him witness. Chapter 14. The planet that devoured Jedi. Some worlds are not planets, they are minds, and they do not forget what lands upon them. There was once a world named Orex, not charted, not mapped, but whispered of in forbidden codices sealed deep within the Jedi Temple's lowest vault. Null, where gravity bends and sound refuses permanence. Oryx sat in the mid-rim, encircled by static storms that repelled most senses. Its surface appeared barren dust-colored canyons, still forests of pale bark, lakes that did not reflect. And yet the planet was alive, not in the way of vines or beasts, but alive in thought. A planetary consciousness, old and faceless, and it fed not on flesh, but on memory. The Jedi knew of Oryx, not recently, but long ago, before even the Old Republic. It was once visited by a Jedi named Aaron, whose name survives only in footnotes and lost dreams. He returned from Oryx without his saber, without speech, without identity. He wept in the presence of sunlight, unable to explain why. His final words before vanishing were, "The dirt remembered my brother before I did." Since that day, the Jedi forbade entry. The archives were sealed, but war makes curiosity cruel. And during the Clone Wars, one night Dallin, mere masterless, brilliant, and unruly, found fragments of Oryx in a Sith War diary unearthed on Felucia. He traced the coordinates and disobeyed. His logs, now redacted and corrupted, were recovered from a long-range temple buoy drifting near. Hut Space. His voice was frayed. It began like this: "The air is too silent. I tried to meditate, but the soil spoke first." He describes the ground pulsing beneath him, not with tremors, but with recognition. He says his dreams began changing. He saw other Jedi unknown to him, saw their faces, heard names he never learned. Then he began forgetting. "I cannot remember my training forms. I try to speak and hear someone else's voice." He attempts to leave, but his ship is gone, not destroyed, not damaged, removed, erased from all scanners, from all presence. He walks for days. The trees begin to mimic familiar shapes. One bends to look like the hilt of his saber. A rock crumbles into the face of a lost friend, and the whispers come, not from air, but from beneath. "We are what you left behind. You gave us your oaths, your loves, your childhood." He sends one final message. It is not a cry for help. It is a surrender. "I understand now. We remember too much, and so it takes from us, so we may rest." Then silence, and Oryx vanishes. No trace, no coordinates, no gravity signature, not a destruction, a withdrawing, as if the planet grew tired of being watched, as if it folded itself into thought, leaving space untouched. Some say Oryx still exists, drifting outside hyperspace, beyond known physics. Some say it awaits a mind powerful enough not to be forgotten. But among the few Jedi who studied forbidden paths, there is a theory that Oryx is the Force's memory made manifest, a wound where time pooled too deeply, a sentient place made of everything we do not wish to carry. And when Jedi touched it, when they brought their traumas, their hopes, their failures, the world could not help but consume, not as punishment, but as compassion. So beware, planets that have no surface echoes. Beware, lands where your name fades first. Beware, places that do not kill, but know you too well to let you go, because not all death is forgetting, and not all forgetting is loss. Some is absorption, and Oryx remembers you now. Chapter 15. The sabers that wept, blades, are not silent. They are bound, and even they remember what the Jedi try to forget. There was no warning, only a flicker. It began in the outer rim, far from Coruscant's gaze. A Jedi Knight named Rallan Muir ignited his saber during a skirmish on Dagoni's Reach, and it whispered, not a voice, not language, a hum fractured into syllables like breath forced through glass. The sound startled him. The blade green and true flickered. Then something dripped from its core. Liquid light, not plasma, not coolant, but something alive in its glow. The saber did not fail. It wept. Raln reported the anomaly. His saber was taken in for analysis. The temple's Kyber artisans found no fault. Only one strange finding. The crystal pulsed at 2 frequencies. not harmonics, not interference, two identities. When pressed, the crystal emitted a faint moan, an audio echo resembling the force signature of a Jedi long dead. The weapon had remembered. Someone else reports followed from other systems. A saber in the hands of a youngling hummed a lullaby no one had taught her. A temple. Guard's staff sang in reverse when spun in a particular pattern. A clone officer, briefly entrusted with a fallen Jedi's weapon, said he heard a voice whisper, "I am not supposed to be here." The temple traced the phenomenon to an anomaly known only in whispers. Kyber drift syndrome, rare. Corruption of Kyber crystals when exposed to artificial essence, and it was spreading. The council began searching for the source. They found it in the Outer Rim, a shattered temple on Vanadrix X, a moon believed lost in the High Republic collapse. Beneath its ruins, archaeologists uncovered a Kyber forge, one forgotten even by the Jedi Order. Its furnace had not cooled in centuries, and in the detritus surrounding it, broken saber hilts, melted fragments, scorched robes, was a single phrase etched into the wall in ancient script. Cloned light does not forget. The truth came slowly. During the early Clone Wars, a splinter group order Null attempted the unthinkable. They tried to clone Force spirits, not bodies, souls, using residual imprints from fallen Jedi extracted through corrupted Kyber. They birthed synthetic echoes. These were not full beings, they were shadows. Spiritual residue placed within host forms. The experiments failed. All clones dissolved into madness or unbeing. But the Kyber used in those rituals had not been purified. It had been mined, repurposed, refitted into sabers across the war effort. The crystals still carried fragments of the cloned souls, shattered, lost, weeping, and now, across the galaxy. Jedi weapons hum not with power, but with memory they do not own. Master Kalor, a blind sage of Ilum, described it best. They are not failing. They are grieving, for the versions of themselves they were forced to forget. Attempts to cleanse the crystals were only partially successful. Some sabers fell silent again. Others shattered on touch. One exploded into mist, leaving only the voice, "I saw the stars die twice." Now, Jedi are taught not to fear their weapons, but to listen, because some sabers whisper warnings. Others beg for names. One youngling in the temple said his saber cried at night. When asked why, he answered, "It misses someone, but it doesn't know who." So beware lightsabers that flicker in still air. Beware blades that hum too softly. Beware the glow that bends with sorrow, not rage. For Kyber does not forget, even when cloned, even when misused, even when shattered. It still remembers the hand that first held it, and sometimes it weeps. Chapter 16. The clones who remembered the future. Time is not a line. It is a wound that reopens itself, and some minds are born, already scarred. It began in the final months of the third year of the Clone Wars. A detachment of 37 clones, stationed on Ilveris Reach, began speaking in strange tongues, not gibberish, not madness, but future dialects. They spoke of moons not yet named, of rebel codes never taught, of a forest world where a metal moon weeps fire. One whispered Ender in his sleep. Over and over, another carved the words, "Skywalker burns," into the walls of a Republic garrison 40 years before the Empire would ever rise. Their commanding officer, CT-2391, known as Latch, broke from formation during a Jedi coordination exercise and shouted at Master Plo Koon, "You shouldn't be here. You die in the sky. We already miss you." None could explain how he knew, nor how the others, one by one, began to speak in perfect future clarity of Death Stars, of masked fathers, of fallen apprentices not yet born. The Jedi called it force trauma, psychogenic fractures from overexposure to battlefield stress, but a Miraluka archivist named Ian Vell disagreed. She analyzed the clone detachment's cortical resonance using forbidden echolocation rituals. What she found was temporal residue. Their minds were echoing forward not by choice, but by design. Somewhere in their growth cycles, during Camino in acceleration, a thread of time had slipped through the cloning matrix, a ripple perhaps from a failed prophecy or collapsed holocron. Whatever the cause, the result was clear. These clones remembered futures the galaxy had not yet lived. They were declared unstable, marked Theta-level security risks, locked beneath Jedi Intelligence Ward 12, in stasis vaults that hummed with quiet dread. But silence did not stop the bleed. Weeks later, across the galaxy, holocrons began to glitch. Not just those in active use, vault relics, personal Jedi training archives, even Sith shards, long buried and inert, began reactivating. They spoke in new tongues, revealed visions not recorded. A Sith holocron on Malastari showed a forest moon it had never known. A Jedi memory crystal whispered, "The helmet falls, the sun forgives, the star dies." One night, studying the artifacts on Assus, described it. The Force is remembering things we haven't done yet. What caused it? Some believe the clones, minds fractured by future vision, had become Force conduits, vessels of unanchored memory. Others claim it was the Force itself, cracking under the weight of too many possible timelines. Each clone a pressure point, each dream a leak. The Force, like crystal, could fracture, and now it had, eventually. Ward 12 fell silent. Every clone within was found in meditative posture, eyes open, unblinking, mouths murmuring phrases that did not belong to this war. The Emperor falls. The Scavenger rises. The veil burns. The final recording, corrupted but partially restored, captured CT-2391's voice. The war never ends, only restarts. We're just the rehearsal. The ward was sealed, its vaults deleted from temple. Records but holocrons across the outer rim. Still echo strange phrases during alignment. He is not the chosen one. He is the bridge. The Force remembers too much. Some Jedi now wake with unfamiliar grief. Some Padawans dream of futures never taught. And the clones, those designed without legacy, have given the galaxy something it never wanted. A memory of what's to come. Not prophecy, confession. So beware minds that echo in two directions. Beware those who speak names not yet spoken. Beware futures that remember you before you exist. Because the Force has no forward, only depth, and now it remembers too much. Chapter 17. The Silence Before Order. The Force is never absent, but once, just once, it stopped speaking. There are moments in galactic history that explode, moments of war, moments of prophecy, moments of betrayal, but the most terrifying moment was none of these. It was a pause, a quiet, so pure, so unnatural, that the stars themselves seemed to listen for something that never came. It began one standard cycle before Order 66 was given. The Jedi, MEDITED, as they always had. They reached into the Force, and the Force did not answer. No tremble of intuition, no whisper of danger, no warmth. Even the youngest felt it. Initiates wept in their sleep. Temple guardians stood longer at their posts, hands twitching toward hilts. On Ilum, a knight crafting their crystal dropped it mid-tuning. The light within simply vanished. If the crystal had forgotten itself, and the dreams ... stopped. For Jedi, dreamlessness is not rest, it is exile. Master Celia Dross, a seer of the Ninth Circle, recorded a final vision. Attempt on a private holocron. Her voice trembles. I reached out. And there was ... nothing. Not darkness, not light, just absence. She attempts to utter a warning. She opens her mouth, and her voice does not come. The recording captures her silence, stretched and unnatural, as her eyes flood with light and then go dark. The holocron burns itself out, emitting only static breath for 7 hours before shattering. Jedi. Across the stars feel the shift. They describe it differently. The Force turned its face. I stood at the edge of the ocean and found no tide. The music ended mid. One archivist drops a data pad and murmurs, "It's gone. The current, it left us." Double quotes, no one speaks the word extinction, but many feel it settle in the lungs like dust. The children grow quiet. The master speaks slower, as if something waits. Just beyond hearing, then comes the cold, not physical, a spiritual void. Lightsabers flicker without cause. Meditation chambers become oppressive. Holocrons refuse to open. A youngling screams in the temple dormitory, "I can't feel the galaxy." She is not comforted, because none of the masters can either. And yet ... the Jedi still march, still lead, still trust the rhythms of their training. They do not know that they are walking into a moment authored in silence, that their fates were already written in the hush. One final account survives, scratched into the floorboards of an old station. On Saleucame, a Padawan, alone, after watching her master fall in their sleep. She writes, "The Force didn't scream. It didn't cry. It just ... looked away. And at the end, I understand now, the silence was the mercy. Because when Order 66 came, it did not arrive like lightning. It did not echo through time. It came as confirmation of a silence already known, of a betrayal already felt, because before the blade, before the blast, before the command came the absence, and nothing terrifies the Jedi more than the moment the Force chooses to say nothing at all. So beware peace without presence. Beware stillness without serenity. Beware quiet that is not calm, because once the galaxy was silenced, and in that silence 1,000 Jedi walked into their own deaths with eyes wide open and no warning. Chapter 18, The Day the Force collapsed. There was a day the Force forgot how to hold itself, not shattered, but folded in grief. It is called Order 66 by records, a military directive, a protocol, a betrayal. But this chapter is not written in commands. It is written in unbeing. For the Force, the great breath that binds all life, collapsed, not broken by blade, not torn by blaster, but by too many truths spoken at once. It began like a star, dying in reverse. First, implosion, then ghosts. The halls of the Jedi Temple filled with layers of time. Children screamed, not at clones, but at faces only they could see. Jedi of the Old Republic, Sith from forgotten empires, visions of themselves grown old, or already dead in the archives. One Jedi reached for a holocron and pulled back a skeletal hand, not her own. She whispered, "I just saw my death." And I was smiling. Then the vaults breathed in voices, hundreds of them, poured from the walls like smoke. "We remember you wrong. We loved you falsely. Your names were always borrowed." On battlefronts the clones began to cry. Not all, but enough tears on unscarred cheeks. Emotion without context. As if the body knew something sacred was being deleted. CT-4497, stationed on Umbara, dropped his weapon mid-march. He fell to his knees and said, "I don't know why, but I feel like I killed a dream I wasn't supposed to wake from." Another clone, after shooting his Jedi general, vomited, then wrote in blood, "We were never meant to last this long." They did not know why. They only felt the collapse. A child, no name preserved, awoke on Jeddah, where no battle raged, and looked up to see the sky turn red. Not from fire, not from lasers, but from the Force itself, bleeding into color, unable to hold its shape. Birds fell in mid-flight. Crops wilted in moments. Pilgrims screamed hymns in reverse. And still the child saw only this. The stars forgot who they were singing to. Elsewhere, Jedi died, but not all with clarity. Some fought bravely. Others fell without grace. A few simply vanished, consumed into the Force, as if erased by erasure itself. One Jedi Master, Iri Vess, reached to connect with the Force and found only her own scream. It echoed not outward, but inward, and from it bloomed nothing. The narrator speaks now with a voice that falters, not because the memory is unclear, but because it is too clear, because to witness the Force forgetting itself is to feel the architecture of all things crumble not explosively, but gently, fatally, as if the galaxy itself sighed and said, "Enough." Time folds in this moment. The past bleeds into future. Visions of Rey holding a saber built from sorrow, of Leia glowing with power, untrained, of Anakin, not as Vader, but as child, again, again, again saying, "Will I always burn for this?" The Force does not answer, because it cannot, because it is remembering and forgetting. Simultaneously, in the deepest vault beneath Coruscant, a final holocron lights without touch. Its voice speaks only once. This is not the end. This is the scream before the echo. Then, like breath held too long, it collapses in silence. So beware the war told only in tactics. Beware the lie that it was orders alone. Beware the clean cut of history, because on that day, not just Jedi died, the Force itself folded, and, for one terrible breath, the galaxy had no center. The narrator weeps now, not for the Jedi, not for the clones, but for the Force who, for one moment, did not know who it was. Chapter 19, the holocron that ate memory. There was once a holocron that did not preserve knowledge, it devoured it. It was forged long before the Clone Wars, before the Sith resurgence, before even the 100-year darkness. Its origin is untraceable. Some say it was built from fractured kyber and voidstone. Others whisper it was not built at all, but grown, like mold, in a tomb that never opened. It has no official name, but in forbidden scrolls it is called the mouth of the hololight. It appears as a cube,